Welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show on Tuesday, January 13th. I'm your host, Denny Carter. I'm subbing for Patrick Daugherty, otherwise known as Roto Pat, because he's at NBC Sports headquarters. Possibly, we're looking into this, possibly wearing a peacock outfit. Okay, these are rumors circulating throughout the NBC Sports universe. We are going to try to confirm that, and if so, obviously, we're going to post video and pictures of that for the next 6 to 8 weeks. So
it'll be our thumbnail for every video going forward for a while.
Yes, indeed. I'm joined by Kyle Dvorchak. We're going to talk today about Monday night's game against between the Texans and Steelers. Of course, the Texans won easily, perhaps ending Aaron Rodgers' career, perhaps ending Mike Tomlin's time with the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll see about that. Neither of them were very into the idea of talking about their long-term future plans after Monday night's loss. We're also going to talk about some news items, including Greg Roman being fired by the Chargers after another postseason disaster. That's 2 years in a row in which Greg Roman's offense has completely faltered in the playoffs. We're also going to talk about some key injuries. Nico Collins suffered a concussion on Monday night against the Steelers. We're going to talk about the Texans offense. We're going to talk about some Rams injury news, along with some coaching stuff. If we have time, Kyle, we're not sure. There's a lot to talk about, especially going into the divisional round of the playoffs. By the way, on Thursday, we're going to preview every game. So check that out. We're not going to do that quite today. But Kyle, I wanted to start by asking you about this breaking news. This happened literally like 2 minutes before we started recording here. The Chargers fired Greg Roman as offensive coordinator after 2 seasons at the helm of that offense. Now, this wasn't surprising because The Athletic, Daniel Popper, the excellent Chargers beat writer, he reported on Tuesday morning that there had been a big tenor shift, as he described it.
Something had happened. We don't know what happened, but between week 18 and Monday or Tuesday morning after the wild card round, something changed in the front office, in the building, and we've got some of our best analysts on it, and we're still looking for what could have changed.
We're looking into it, but it was actually pretty cringeworthy, actually. I read the whole report, and, Bradley Bozeman, Becton, some other offensive linemen for the Chargers were interviewed by Daniel Popper after the loss to the Patriots, and he asked, should Greg Roman be back? And to a man, their response was, that's not my decision. And we had some scheme problems, and then they would backtrack and say, but as a team, we failed and this and that. But to
be fair, as a Chargers offensive lineman, you're looking out for your own best interest and being like, if someone's like, what was wrong with the Chargers? And you're just watching defenders blow by you every play, you're like, could have been the scheme. It could have been the wide receivers, could have been anyone, but I doubt it was the offensive line.
That's right. And they had 2 devastating offensive line injuries this year. Joe Alt lost for the season. I mean, struggled with injuries the whole season pretty much. Rashawn Slater lost for the whole season in the preseason after signing a mega contract with the team. So I guess it was sort of laid out at that point, maybe for Greg Roman. Do you think, though, that this was the right move, and what do you expect moving forward for the Chargers?
I mean, what do I expect? The Harbaughs are so set in their ways. Yes, it was the right move. I don't think Roman was a good hire in the first place. He quickly wore out his welcome in Baltimore to the point where we got reports of teams calling out their plays in the pre-snap in Baltimore at the end of his final year there. Mm-hmm. It's very obvious that I don't think he should have been the guy to try and usher Herbert from being a good highlight reel but not really successful postseason quarterback to hopefully a Super Bowl run quarterback. He was not the guy to usher him into the next era of Justin Herbert football. In fact, they stayed exactly where they were. Team had some more success, and that didn't have a whole lot to do with what Roman brought to the table. What will they do? I pray, and the reason I'm praying, the reason I'm looking to God here is because I think it requires a miracle. Requires a divine miracle for them to go out of the Harbaugh coaching tree. With every decision both of these coaches make, it is just keeping guys in the fold that have coached for one of Jim or John Harbaugh. And that is the most likely outcome. I hope that they go out and they find some outside voices who can bring some more creativity to this offense. Like if Mike McDaniel doesn't, for almost every coach offensive coordinator gig, I think the answer is if Mike McDaniel doesn't get hired, Bring him in as most clear answer. Will they do that? I really doubt they do something like that.
Yeah.
The most likely outcome is they get in a bidding war with the Bucs over Todd Monken, which Monken's actually he's a good offensive coordinator, I think. So that wouldn't be the worst case scenario. But to me, I do think the most likely outcome is still a pretty Harbaugh-esque outcome.
So you're hoping for the end of the Harbaugh jobs program that both John and Jim have been running.
Look, not to get political, but this jobs program is taking up so much taxpayer money. And to replace it with a different jobs program. Most teams run a Sean McVay jobs program or a Kyle Shanahan jobs program. Those programs work. They put food on tables. Right. The Harbaughs run the worst version of it.
Well, so far you've gotten religious by asking God to deliver a good offensive coordinator, and you've gotten political. So we're off to a good start here. I will say that the Greg Roman experience wasn't what I thought it would be with the Chargers, because, he comes in with his reputation, well-deserved, as a run first, run always, Arthur Smith style offensive coordinator, play caller. That wasn't the case. In 2025, the Chargers were 8th in pass rate over expected. Last season, they were actually in the top 3 for a while in pass rate over expected. Their neutral pass rate was pretty high. They didn't run the ball all that often. And I actually was encouraged by that, because I was like, oh, okay. Like Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh realize that Justin Herbert has to be the centerpiece, has to be at the center of everything they do. And the way that Jim Harbaugh talks about Justin Herbert literally is the greatest quarterback ever. I mean, truly, he really says these things about Justin Herbert. I don't really know how, but he does. It makes me think that there's a chance that he leans into that with the next hire and says, okay, we're going to do a pass first offense going forward. That would be cool for fantasy purposes. I'd be very into that. For McConkey, for Quentin Johnston, I guess if Keenan Allen sticks around, who knows? I think it would be very good for fantasy.
Denny, it's a good thing we didn't riff, because, and I know you're not checking our private chat. Mike Tomlin resigned when we went on. Specifically he informed, I'll just read the Adam Schefter tweet. Mike Tomlin just informed the team that he is stepping down as the Steelers head coach. So not fired, but this parting did at some point have to happen. I thought they might give it another year, because Tomlin was reportedly under contract through 2026. Then his contract is up, and the team they still in this way get to not have to have fired a coach since 1968, I think is the year, because they obviously just had a great run of coaches. They haven't fired one in 50 or 60 years. And technically that streak does hold up, albeit they clearly just could have fired him. So what is this team? They're in such a weird spot, with or without Tomlin. They're in such a weird spot heading into 2026. What do they do?
Yeah. It's not surprising, considering, as recently as week 13 or week 14, the Pittsburgh crowd was chanting "Fire Tomlin," like a very loud, clear chant that you could hear on TV. It wasn't just like a smattering of fans. The city seemed done with him. And, he did what he always does, which is to just barely sneak into the postseason and then just lose by 1 million. And I think that kind of, it ran its course. It's cool to make the playoffs every year. I will say that it's impressive in a way, but also being so firmly capped. What are you playing for? Are you really, like the Steelers for the past 10 years at least have been playing to win one playoff game? That's been the goal. I feel like the standard, as Mike Tomlin likes to talk about, the standard can't be that with the Steelers. I think this means for sure Aaron Rodgers gone. No, they're not bringing a new regime is not bringing him in. We might actually see the Steelers go into somewhat of a rebuild mode.
I feel like they have to. As always, good quarterbacks rarely hit free agency. And usually it's because we're putting good in quotes, truly, we didn't even put good in quotes for Daniel Jones. It was just backup quarterback Daniel Jones is a free agent. And really interesting. It were obviously credit to him and to Shane Steichen until his injury. That worked out really well. And then Sam Darnold, again, quote, a good quarterback has hit free agency, and credit to him. That has worked out really well. Mm-hmm. I really don't think we have that type of player as a free agent. The best free agents, I mean, it's going to be like Kirk Cousins once he gets cut, or like
Right.
Tua once he literally once he gets cut could follow a handful. Geno is another one. It's like once he gets cut, or if they can like trade him as a salary cap maneuver.
Oof.
I don't think there is a quarterback in which you can even pitch yourself on the redemption arc that we've gotten for other quarterbacks who have hit free agency or been like cheap trade situations in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe they won't do this, because it's not like Tomlin was the only voice in the room saying he wants to compete every year. I'm sure having Tomlin does tell your GM, like, to keep the organization happy, we can't tell Tomlin we need you to win no more than 3 games. That obviously plays a factor in it,
Right.
but also the ownership and the general management, I think, also play a factor in this team's desire to just make the playoffs, for that to be the standard, like you said, that phrase that Tomlin loves. So I don't know if they truly go into a rebuild mode, but this is a really not good roster. Like the pitch on this roster was Aaron Rodgers he did what everyone expected him to do as sort of the ceiling, is that he can game manage our bad, slow, uninteresting offense, and we can ride the defense. But the defense really wasn't that good this year. Like they, in the years past, have been able to carry even worse offenses to even better regular seasons. Obviously you missed like a few games from TJ Watt. They were just banged up. I think Alex Highsmith was banged up early in the year too. They had some absences, right? They'll probably be better next year, but like, could they compete with the Texans type of defense, where that defense can carry them to playoff victories, maybe multiple in a row? Texans are that good? No, not really. I don't think they're in that. They're not even the same zip code as a team like the Texans or a team like the Broncos in general. And the offense is decrepit. Like they have like a average, I don't know, they're not that good of an offensive line. The running backs aren't anything special. We'll talk about them in a little bit. We can just move into Steelers talk at this point.
Yeah.
Receivers are really bad. Quarterback is a complete unknown. They desperately need a 2-year rebuild.
They do. And I don't know how that's going to go over with Steelers fans who have never done the rebuild thing.
Yeah.
And also ownership. I don't know if ownership would buy into it. So
we'll go horribly with ownership as well.
they're going. Yeah. The more I think about it, the more I think they're going to just keep trying to string it along for a while, make some signings, boost some, key positions, maybe in the off season, make a trade or two. I don't know, get aggressive in the draft. But really the way Tomlin was coaching was so stale. His decision-making, especially on 4th downs in critical situations, was so old school as to be borderline comical at times. Talking about, punting on 4th and inches from the 50 or around midfield, right? Like this stuff was normal when he took the coaching job 19 years ago. That was normal stuff. Like we are going to punt, we're going to run the ball, we're going to kick field goals, we're going to win by 13-10 every game. That was normal stuff. I feel like in the modern NFL, he is beyond a dinosaur. I mean, John Harbaugh was looking like a dinosaur by the end of his Ravens run. Tomlin is something beyond that. So I don't think he fits in the modern NFL. I'm positive any team out there with a head coaching vacancy would, give their left arm for Mike Tomlin. I get that. He is a good coach. I don't think he delegated properly. I don't think bringing in Arthur Smith, basically he brought in Arthur Smith to run the offense that he wanted. Right. I mean, and that to me tells me that, he was okay. He wasn't running the offense. He wasn't operating the offense. He wasn't calling the plays, but he kind of was. Because he said, Arthur, buddy, I know what you're going to do. You're going to run
truly like any club that lets me in is a club I don't want to be a part of. Like any offensive coordinator that Mike Tomlin was going to hire was going to be an offensive coordinator. You didn't want to see offensive coordinate the Steelers if you were a Steelers fan. Like that was all, like you said, that was always going to be the case. Yeah. Whether or not it was a young gun coming up or if it was a retread like Arthur Smith. Yeah. If you were hired by the Steelers, the only qualification is that you had to run an offense that would please Mike Tomlin. So that was always going to be this type of outcome. We can move actually into this game because among other sad endings, is Aaron Rodgers going to retire? Maybe just put a bow in his career. I truly can't see how he could possibly want to play next year. He was miserable, man. He looked like you felt bad for him. He looked so over the concept of playing football by the end of this Texans blowout.
I knew it was bad when Rodgers was screaming at receivers in the first quarter, and before the game got out of hand. And I'm thinking, oh man, this guy is just in hell right now.
Yep.
So, not great. I do have a stat I wanted to share with the folks. This is from Nate Tice of the Football 301 podcast. Really good podcast with him and Matt Harmon. I recommend it to everybody. So here's what he posted last night. Nate Tice. There have been 283 instances where an NFL quarterback had at least 20 pass attempts in a playoff game since 2013. Okay, now that's a mouthful, but listen up. Aaron Rodgers' game last night against the Texans ranks 283rd in dropback success rate, 21%, and EPA per dropback. It is the worst playoff performance since at least 2013, and that includes, by the way, the aforementioned Justin Herbert's absolute epic nightmare meltdown last year against the Texans, against the same Texans team. So he did not go out. He did not go out with a bang. I do think, and I posted this on Blue Sky last night, that the liveliness of his arm and his cerebral way of playing, his ability to read defenses, to make adjustments at the line, I think makes him like probably a top 30 quarterback. And I just feel like with a brain with lots of experience, even if the body is failing mostly and you can't run, you can't operate, you can't be mobile, I feel like you can still start games in an NFL that is desperate for starting caliber quarterbacks. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, he could still start in the sense of like, I saw some pretty bad quarterbacks play football this year. Oh. And among the 5 or 6 worst, Aaron Rodgers wasn't one of them. Like I had to watch JJ McCarthy be one of the worst quarterbacks in football, and then Max Brosmer hold my beard him like easily too.
Right.
I should not have to watch. I mean, honestly, I'm starting to see things like the Matrix is starting to open.
Yeah. Tell me what you're seeing.
They literally tried to bring Aaron Rodgers in as the bridge to JJ McCarthy last year, but I think Aaron probably wanted to just be the clear 17-game starter. Understandably so. What would be the point of Aaron Rodgers having accomplished so much, MVP, Super Bowl win? Like, what would be the point of him going to be a bridge? At this point, or at least as of last year, what would be the point? There was none. He would much rather just try and win 17 games on his own and make some sort of, ill-fated Super Bowl run. At this point, though, no one understandably thinks he should start 17 games, but he does make a semi-interesting in the way that you just don't want to spend too much on a bridge quarterback. He makes a semi-interesting bridge quarterback and or tutor for JJ McCarthy, because we've already talked about the free agency pool being weak. It's not a good quarterback class either. I guess when we talked about the free agency pool, I didn't even think Rodgers, is truly a free agent. It was just a 1-year deal.
Yeah.
That sort of makes sense in that they tried to do it last year. He probably priced himself out in terms of, I don't want to have any threat from the backup. He doesn't have that leverage anymore. And he was not horrific this year. I think he was 26 in EPA per play, sandwiched right between like Tyler Shuck or Jacoby Brissett and Bryce Young, who I watched start a lot of football games, and it was not dreadful. That's not a way you can go out and make a Super Bowl run, but a lot of teams just want quarterbacks who don't embarrass the team. And Rodgers doesn't embarrass the team other than screaming at his teammates all the time. But in terms of like just his on-field play, he's not an embarrassment to football. He's losing it, but he isn't completely lost. Like we watched Marcus Mariota start like half a season this year. He gets a bunch of starts every year for some random team. He's not good, but he doesn't embarrass the team. And I think that's what Rodgers still can bring to the table. That would make a lot of sense for the Vikings.
I think so too. I mean, if I remember the reports correctly from last offseason, even into the fall, it was Rodgers was much more interested in the Vikings than the Vikings were in him. But like you said, I think it came with the caveat of like I'm not messing around. Like the kid can sit, and I'm the quarterback. I'm the captain. That leverage is gone. I will say just real quick about his meltdown against the Texans. And obviously, like I said, the Nate Tice stat about worst playoff performance in the last, 15 years. I will say this, it couldn't have been a worse matchup for Rodgers because the Texans are a team that gets quick pressures without blitzing. And in that scenario, Rodgers is the second worst quarterback in the league as far as completion rate and as far as adjusted yards per attempt. The only worst quarterback in that situation is Shedeur Sanders. So it shaped up to me going into that game as a game where Aaron Rodgers could not succeed. Literally could not. Like maybe the Steelers were going to score a defensive touchdown or special teams. Maybe Gainwell or Warren was going to break off a long run against an elite run defense, but it was not going to be Rodgers. I wouldn't put too much stock in that meltdown. I still think I feel like in Kevin O'Connell's offense, he could be viable. Not great, but viable.
Sure. Yeah, viable is like all I'll give him, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Let's move on to DK Metcalf real quick, as long as we're talking about the Steelers. Only 2 catches on 4 targets last night against the Texans for 42 yards. I just wanted to ask, how did DK Metcalf fare in his first season in Pittsburgh? And what can we expect in 2026? Whether he's in Pittsburgh or not, we're obviously not sure with all the turmoil going on.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine they have an easy way to get out of his contracts. They signed him to that 3-year, very expensive deal, which they did have a chance to get out of when he was suspended. They could have voided his money, and the report said that they chose to basically decline the ability to void future money. I don't know. Maybe you don't know what's going to happen at the time, but like you said, given the turmoil, they're in a rebuild, or at least they should be. The smart thing is to be in a rebuild because there's just nowhere to go.
Yeah.
But parallel or down from here, just go all the way down. I would assume they can't really get out of his contract. And I think he is the same DK Metcalf he's always been, which is on the precipice of being a team's number 1 receiver and never able to get over the hump. 21% targets per route run. That is the same mark as guys like Romeo Doubs and Troy Franklin. 1.8 yards per route run. That's a pretty solid number. And given the context of Pittsburgh's very mediocre offense, it was, I believe it was 28th in the NFL. Given the context of the bad offense, being the 28th best wide receiver in yards per route run is very good, but it's what you expect from a good number 2 receiver. And it seemed like Pittsburgh finally gave him the opportunity to, if he was ever going to ascend to true target dominance, to true elite target earning status, it would happen here. The team was just so bereft of wide receiver talent and just pass catcher talent in general that this was the chance. And not that he didn't have an okay season. He had a solid season, but that's what he does. He has solid seasons, and he just doesn't have the ability to truly be an alpha in terms of you run your offense entirely through him. I don't know if that's worth the money they're paying him, and I don't know if it's going to be worth his 2026 ADP.
11.2 average depth of target this season. It was the lowest of his career. I was actually kind of shocked it was that high. I would have guessed that it was in single digits. But you can credit that to Aaron Rodgers only averaging about 6.5 air yards per throw in the regular season. That actually jumped to almost 10 against the Texans on Monday night, which I kind of, you got to give him credit for pushing it downfield a little bit here. But yeah, Metcalf to me is a really good wide receiver too. He is a T. Higgins type, right? I mean, not quite as good as T. Higgins, but he's in that same mold. He had every opportunity, like you said, this year to have a target per route run of 25%, of 27%, somewhere in that range, because he's competing with nobody for targets in this offense. He didn't do it. I think that should be, that's something fantasy managers should kind of file away going forward, no matter where he plays. Like Kyle said, likely in Pittsburgh, but we'll see. To the backfield for the Steelers. So I asked this question before I looked powerfully into the numbers, and it sounds a little silly in hindsight, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Did this season officially end the idea of Jaylen Warren as a workhorse back? What do you say?
I mean, I don't know. He had 251 touches, nearly just shy of 1,300 yards from scrimmage. For fantasy, finished as the RB17, excuse me. And he missed one game as well. That was total points. He missed a game, still went as the RB17. Yeah. The metrics were mostly good on him. Not every single metric was good, but mostly good. 8th in rush yards over expected per attempt, 12th in success rate, 6th in the NFL in yards per route run. And I love this one because this is what the Steelers have always said. The numbers, which are very speculative on this, have always been mixed. He was at best in the NFL among running backs in pass blocking grade. Steelers love his pass pro, but the PFF stuff never really thinks he's that good in pass pro. Right. Finally, this year, the non-PFF film grade and the Steelers' evaluation of him in pass pro and PFF film grade finally aligned to say, truly was the best running back in pass pro, one of the best running backs in yards per route run, still good on a pretty high number of touches for his standards in terms of the rushing metrics. Do I think that he should be a team's long-term bell cow option? No, like obviously I think the fact that as his touches have gone up, he has not been able to sustain that like 2022, 2023 hyper efficiency, like Tony Pollard in Dallas type of awesome backup stuff. Those numbers have come down ever since they've been giving him more work. He shouldn't be a true workhorse, but I think he's a good stopgap workhorse in the same way like Travis Etienne this year. Do I think he's like an elite running back? Do I think he's one of the 10 best running backs in the NFL? No, I don't think Travis Etienne is one of the 10 best running backs in the NFL. But do I think he did a decent job getting a lot of touches in a good Jags offense, earned those touches and was reasonably efficient with them? And, contract permitting because he's a free agent. Should they stick with him in general? Yeah, he had a good season. Keep giving him touches. That's kind of what I think Jaylen Warren is. Or like Javonte Williams. Javonte slowed down at the end of the year, but Javonte Williams was a good value for the Cowboys. He, in the end, had pretty good efficiency numbers while giving him a ton of touches. That's good. That's all you can ask for from cheap running backs, specifically from running backs you're not paying a lot. If a team wanted to moneyball the running back position, and maybe the Steelers do, Warren's under contract for another year or two. If they want to moneyball the running back position and say, we're going to give Warren as much work next year, and maybe we can get something out of Caleb Johnson, because I believe Kenneth Gainwell is a free agent. Maybe we can get something out of Caleb Johnson. I think that's a reasonable approach, especially in hopefully a rebuild year. Do anything to make Caleb Johnson, who you spent a lot on work, but you get to not embarrass yourself if he truly is a flop by having Jaylen Warren be the steady veteran. On the long-term scale, no, he's not really a workhorse, but I think he fits in that like tier 3 of you can be a workhorse in a pinch. And a pinch could be a whole year for some teams, kind of like it was this year for him or Javonte or Travis.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with that. Just for the record, 251 touches in the regular season for Jaylen Warren, 187 touches for Kenny Gainwell the fourth. I don't know, Gainwell strikes me as an interesting guy to keep track of this year. We'll talk about him in the offseason. Just real quick on the Texans offense, Nico Collins goes out last night with a concussion in the third quarter. He will likely enter the league's protocol. Practice is probably iffy this week. Keep it locked to Rotoworld, obviously, for the latest on Nico Collins. I would be surprised if he doesn't play, but if he does not play, Kyle, are we slotting in Christian Kirk as the wide receiver 1 for Houston after 9 targets, 8 catches, 144 yards, and a touchdown, running primarily from the slot, 21 of 23 routes from the slot? The Steelers have been very generous to the slot this season. Is he the de facto wide receiver 1 if Nico's out?
So we would, if you're just asking me to do like DFS projections, he is the highest projected Texans wide receiver. Do I think he is safely the wide receiver 1? Like, has done nothing all year, Christian Kirk, who pops up with a mid-game injury to Nico Collins. He was having a good game before Nico Collins got hurt, to be clear. He was having a good game either way. But in a matchup that you said that would have been really advantageous for him with or without Nico Collins, do I think that like if we flip the cards, he's cheap in DFS, and if we flip the cards and he's like 45%, he's the salary play that everyone wants to go to because he had a good game last week, and there just aren't a lot of options. I don't think DFS has as much recency bias, but with few options, he's going to be chalk. Do I think that we should play super chalk Christian Kirk versus the Patriots on the road? That I will say no to. At that point, I will start taking shots on guys like Jaden Higgins, who was kind of hovering around 50% of the routes, which is very frustrating, or Xavier Hutchinson, who logged 2/3 of the routes, the exact same number Christian Kirk did, just didn't have the explosion game. Yes, Kirk is the number 1 receiver de facto if Nico Collins doesn't play. Is it good to jam that type of player in DFS? Skeptical that that's the case.
I understand that. Play the best plays, though, right? Well, we'll see. We'll talk about that on Thursday. Just real quick on Houston's offense, they were 7% below their expected pass rate against the Steelers, minus 10% on first down. So a very run-heavy game that led to 29 total rushing attempts for the running backs, 19 for Woody Marks, 10 for Nick Chubb. Woody Marks had his weekly in-game injury where it looked like he was probably out for the season, and then he miraculously was okay. So I guess going forward, Woody Marks is going to be the pretty clear-cut RB1 for the Texans. Anything on the Texans backfield here, Kyle?
No, I mean, the split, the fact that we saw as much Nick Chubb as we did was weird, but it wouldn't also shock me if, because the game plan is to run the football a lot, you don't want to put everything on Woody Marks' plate. And as the pie, like assuming the game plan maybe changes next week, as the pie shrinks, that shrinking largely just means like, let's cut out Nick Chubb. Like we can still give Woody Marks 18 carries. Yeah. Let's do Nick Chubb 6 or 5. Right. So I wouldn't say that we can pencil in Nick Chubb for double-digit touches next week.
All right. Well, tonight on NBA Coast to Coast, the top two teams in the Western Conference square off again in Oklahoma City. Find out if Wemby and the Spurs can move to 4-0 this season against the Thunder. Tip-off is set for 8 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock.
Oh man, I was at the NBA Cup. I think it was a semifinal.
Really?
Where they played each other.
Yeah.
And Spurs were getting rocked through the first quarter because Wemby's like on a minutes restriction or something. I don't follow basketball. I was just there for other stuff. And as soon as Wemby checks in, like the moment he checks in, they're like, all right, we're just going to easily win this game. And of course, at some point they have to like check him out and they're like, all right, we're easily going to lose this game. And then every time he steps on the court, they're easily winning this game. It was a pretty fun game to go to.
That's funny. Yeah, I will be watching that. I've actually been watching a fair amount of NBA. Don't tell Pat. All right, we're going to talk about some coaching stuff, some other headlines that you can find on rotoworld.com. Keep it locked, as always, to Rotoworld throughout the week. So Todd Monken, he is still technically the Baltimore Ravens offensive coordinator. I looked it up this morning. I confirmed that he is. He's interviewing for the Tampa Bay Bucs offensive coordinator position, however. So I suppose that it's just a formality that he will be gone from Baltimore and looking for a new job. So, the Bucs kind of cleaned house. Like they told Todd Bowles, clean house or you're gone. So he did. Todd Monken in Tampa. Now he does have some experience with Baker Mayfield. They were in Cleveland for one season together. Is this good? Is it bad? Is it neutral for Baker Mayfield in this offense? An offense, I should say, a Tampa offense that really, really was deeply inefficient over the second half of the season.
I mean, genuinely, they were one of the worst passing offenses in the NFL from like pretty middle of the season, like week 7 onward. Just a brutal stretch of football from everyone involved. A change had to be made. In that sense, like you cannot run back what they did last year on offense. The fact that they're making a change is good. What does Todd Monken's like in theory, right? He literally hasn't even been fired, let alone hasn't joined this team yet. But like the next Ravens head coach is going to want to bring in his guys, as he should. So let's assume Todd Monken's a bit of a free agent. I guess the answer is like, I don't know what Todd Monken's offense is, because to his credit, everywhere he goes, he sees what the team has and really leans into it. Like with the Ravens, he was year over year, one of the most run heavy coaches in the NFL, playing at like specifically this past year at one of the slowest neutral paces in the NFL. And even in years past with the Ravens, he was generally a slow pace, extremely run heavy team. And of course he got an MVP and a near second MVP out of Lamar Jackson. And Jackson was banged up this year and it didn't work. Like that sucks and does happen. And then when he was back with the Bucs a long time ago, they just threw like crazy. Like they just went nuts, which is the exact opposite. And they're a little faster. The exact opposite of what we saw with the Ravens. So I think he's extremely pliable. Like he got a very different style of football Lamar Jackson than he had in previous stops. And it worked up until last year extremely well. I don't know how well it will work with Baker Mayfield, because maybe what we've seen over the past 2 years is Baker just got reasonably lucky having two awesome OCs in 2024 and 2023. Like it looks both like Dave Canales and Liam Cohen are genuinely really smart offensive minds. Maybe that's what he needs to stay on track, to get back on track, frankly, in Tampa Bay. And I don't know if you have that level of offensive mind in Todd Monken. Like Lamar's really good. It shouldn't be a shock that Lamar has had good seasons under Todd Monken. So, and he quite literally won an MVP before Todd Monken joined this team. So I do think though that he will lean into the passing game a lot under Baker Mayfield, because when he's had Baker Mayfield-esque, I mean, he literally did have Baker once, but when he's had Baker Mayfield or Baker Mayfield-esque quarterbacks in the past, he really lets them rip it.
The Baker stuff was concerning, not just in the final month or two of the season. It was before that. And he was banged up. I know he stopped doing that crazy stuff where he would just run headlong into three defenders in the middle of the field and, pop up and be fine. He stopped popping up so much is what I would say. And looked a little banged up. He's not a spring chicken anymore. I feel like maybe he should be done with that part of his football life, just running as if he's Derrick Henry. I give him credit, and it pumps up the crowd. It pumps up the team. People seem to really like him, but he was getting away with it so much in the first month of the season And I felt, we were on this show, on the preview shows in September and October, we were kind of raising red flags, like okay, I know he's throwing touchdowns right now, but it's kind of lucky. Like this can't keep up. Like if you look at the underlying metrics, it's just not good. He's super inaccurate, especially on medium range, on intermediate throws, which by the way, he excelled at the year before in 2023 and 2024. This year, not so much. Again, I don't know if that was injuries or whatnot or scheme, but I think it was concerning. The one thing I'd say about the appeal of this job is that you have a locked-in starter in Mayfield, and you have a really good group of pass catchers in Mike Evans, I guess Godwin, who seemed kind of washed, but whatever, we'll see. Sometimes it takes years to recover from an injury like he had. So Emeka Egbuka, who I understand faded, but I still think he's good. And then Jalen McMillan, who pops sometimes, who kind of looks good. I don't know. So
Tez Johnson is this team's 5th receiver, and there are a bunch of teams where he could be like the number 2 that you kind of want to upgrade, but he's pretty good still.
That's right. And then, you throw in Bucky Irving, who I understand disappointment for most of the season. There were those weird reports about why he was missing time anyway.
Bank examiner all-star, put on the Mount Rushmore of bank examiner plays. We both, I think the but you were about to say is that he's still probably really good. He's probably good. This is an offense, I think, with a lot of talent. And if it can be harnessed in the right way, and I think a guy like Todd Monken can do that. Like you said, I mean, he's pliable. I think that he will do what works rather than trying to shoehorn his philosophy into a team's offense. Like I kind of think Greg Roman was like that until this year when he finally was like, okay, we're just going to throw more than I like. I think Monken would be a good hire for the Bucs. I'd like to see, for fantasy purposes, I'd like to see him go there. Let's go to the John Harbaugh portion of the podcast because we're going to be talking about that until he's hired and then after. So John Harbaugh, obviously fired by the Ravens last week. NFL Network's Mike Garafolo reports that the Titans are, quote, firmly in the mix for John Harbaugh. I don't really understand how that's possible, but Connor Hughes of SNY reports that there is, quote, belief among other coaching candidates that it's the Giants and the Falcons as the leading candidates to land John Harbaugh. That seems believable to me. There's no way he's going to Tennessee, right? No, I don't see why he would, unless there's like some connection to Tennessee that I'm not seeing. But like the Harbaughs are Midwest guys. Like, I think they were from Toledo, if I remember correctly. Like, I don't see like what the connection here would be. Titans roster is among the, if not straight up the worst. Obviously, they have Cam Ward. Congrats on having a quarterback who's terrible last year. Obviously, he has more ceiling than many other situations at quarterback, but the floor, it's the worst quarterback in the NFL. He was among the worst quarterbacks in the NFL, and he needs something to change to not be that. Why would you not just take Jackson Dart over him? I mean, if you're redrafting the 2025 NFL draft, you are running to the podium to get Jackson Dart. You're not considering Cam Ward. So I just don't see why he would get that. Also, man, Todd Monken's got to be over. Like, he's got to be over he's got to be through the roof seeing both Harbaughs. I mean, assuming John obviously is going to get a head coaching job, need offensive coordinators. I don't think it's tenable for him to rejoin John Harbaugh, because part of the big reason that John Harbaugh was fired is that he didn't want to do the let me clear out my staff and blame all them.
Yeah, right.
Understandably so. I mean, I respect him for not wanting to just fire off guys to cover up some of his own faults. So maybe he doesn't have the power to bring back in Todd Monken right away. Like, Monken's got to be pretty happy that both Harbaughs are looking for offensive coordinators. And this is a spot where, even more so than Jim in LA, John, wherever he goes, I am very concerned that he's just hiring a crony. I would not be excited for, specifically if he somehow ends up in Tennessee, I would not be excited for what Cam Ward's offense is going to look like under Harbaugh.
Yeah, I would have a hard time being excited as well. But hey, the Harbaugh Jobs program rolls on, and that's what's important here. I feel like the state of the Titans organization, the ownership situation, uncertain who's calling the shots. They're going back and forth on whether they're building the team, whether they're competing for right now. There's no guidance. There's no direction here. John Harbaugh is the one guy who, I guess, if he for some reason, I just can't imagine if he for some reason ends up with the Titans, he could provide some direction and like create some culture of like, hey, we are an NFL football team. This is how we're going to operate. I think that would be a great scenario for Cam Ward. Just in that, I'm not talking about scheme. I'm not talking about hiring offensive coordinators, but just having someone, a stable, established coach to be like, I'm the boss. This is how we're doing things. I think that'd be good.
Also, in the same vein of why it might appeal to Harbaugh, you go to an organization that's in disarray, that doesn't really have a clear sense of like leadership or direction, and you just get to run the show. Like he probably has more power. At least there's a chance. Like there's a power vacuum there that he has such a strong chance of taking over if he joins Tennessee. Like that's, I'm sure, has a lot of that aspect of the Tennessee job. I'm sure has a lot of appeal that like, if things break in his favor, he can be like de facto GM going forward.
Yeah.
Whereas like in a spot like New York, I don't know. I'm not sure exactly that he has that same kind of power ceiling, essentially. I still don't think it's worth taking the job for, but I would understand it. I think he just ends up taking the New York job probably. I think he would be like culturally an awesome fit with Jackson Dart. Like these two lunatics would just love each other. I think the Falcons will pursue him pretty heavily though, because we know that they were very interested. They were like one of the only teams that was interested in Bill Belichick, the same like former star, let go by his previous team, but like he might work for us type of guy. And the only issue, I think the biggest issue is that Belichick wanted probably way too much power in Atlanta. I think there's a decent chance that Harbaugh fills that same archetype they were looking for. Ultimately, I think Giants is the answer, but like I get why Falcons want, or I'm not surprised by the pattern matching of the Falcons wanting him.
That's a good way to put it. Pattern matching. That actually makes sense. I will say though, like if you don't have a quarterback, you don't have anything. And I don't know if the Titans have a quarterback, and I don't know if the Falcons. I actually know the Falcons don't have a quarterback, so that's a tough spot for them. All right, let's move on to the Ravens completing an interview on Monday with former Commanders offensive coordinator Kliff Kingsbury for the team's head coaching vacancy. Now, we've talked a lot over text, you and me and RotoPat, about Kliff Kingsbury, and I think that there are different dynamics here. One is he going to be a good, successful, long-term NFL head coach? You would answer no. I would also answer no. I probably not is what I would say. Could it be fun to put him with a hyper mobile, very creative quarterback in Lamar Jackson? I think that would be fun. What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, when was the last time it was fun for I think it was 4 years in Arizona. Was it like ever fun for Kyler Murray? Like ever?
Wait a sec. No, well, I guess the COVID season you can kind of throw out because everybody went crazy that season, but statistically because of the no crowds and whatever. But I mean, what are you forgetting? Jaden Daniels?
No, I'm saying like, yeah, congrats on one good year in 6 seasons of like the number 1 overall pick and the number 2 overall pick. Like, yeah, I would expect you to have a good year if that's what you're working with over 6 seasons. He does some stuff well. Like, I do think there are some merits to his game, specifically as a play caller, that work out quite well. Does a lot of play action. For fantasy purposes, he just plays fast. He's always played fast. He's not like Chip Kelly speed, but just every year he's probably clocking in as like a top 10-ish pace kind of guy. I think when things go well, they probably play even faster. You know, he had some solid years with Arizona. Like, they weren't horrific years, right? They just weren't that good. But I also think it's stuff he figured out that worked 9 years ago and has chosen to never update his priors. Like when you look at the last year, this year, obviously, but it's over for the Commanders, their usage of motion on passing plays, 24th in the NFL. They're targeting the middle of the field, like these easy layup money, like these are the shots you want to be taking, 28th in percent of targets that go to the middle of the field. Their neutral situation pass rate this year, 28th, 25th in pass rate over expected. Like, they're just some basic bread and butter things that he has just chosen not to really update his priors on. But I do think he figured some stuff out early in his career that has worked quite well. Like I said, the play action. He gets his quarterbacks to throw their first read at a really high rate. And the first read targets are really valuable. That's basically just saying when he designs passing plays, they go to the player it's most designed to at a pretty high rate and typically works out well. So I don't think he's terrible. And I do think Lamar would almost certainly have a bounce back year because this past year really sucked. So I do think he would have a bounce back year, but I just don't get why would the Ravens resign themselves to like probably a good, maybe even really good offense,
Mm-hmm.
when you have a near 3-time MVP quarterback, like why do you not shoot for the moon there?
Mm-hmm. What would be shooting for the moon for you?
I mean, Kliff Kingsbury is probably. I think Kliff Kingsbury is probably, especially at a team level, a little bit better of a shoot for the moon kind of shot. Because I think McDaniel is like, he's not the worst leader of men. We actually saw, I mean, Pat's made this point. They didn't roll over and die at the end of the season in Miami. They beat up on some bad teams, but like a worse team would have just lost to the Jets or whatever. A worse team would have just lost to some of these squads. I do think McDaniel, as far as like offensive efficiency, like he convinced the spreadsheets. And I know like the game isn't played on spreadsheets, but as it turns out, the most efficient quarterback in the spreadsheets is usually making it to the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
He convinced the spreadsheets like 2 times in a row, very different ways too, that Tua Tagovailoa, Tua Tagovailoa was like the best quarterback by far. He hung 70 points on Sean Payton's Broncos. Like I watched him do things that I just didn't think were possible. So I certainly think if you can have Mike McDaniel as your OC, that is a shoot for the moon. Like get a good head coach and shoot and play him at OC or give him your OC job. That's a shoot for the moon kind of shot. The more realistic one, especially in a team's long-term outlook, I do think it's Kubiak probably.
Okay. I would like to see the Ravens, because, the Ravens culture, defense, we're tough, this and that. I get that. So for me, Jesse Minter makes sense as the head coach. Sure. And then you bring in Mike McDaniel and Minter says, Mike, the offense is yours. Not reading all that. That's your thing.
Also makes sense. I'm on board with this.
That would be tremendous because if Kliff Kingsbury, I can't really see this happening, but if he actually becomes the head coach of the Ravens, he's not bringing in anybody to be a coordinator or play call or anything. He's doing it all. I still don't think it would be such a bad thing, but I guess we'll see how that unfolds. I'm going to get into a few more news items before we say goodbye until Thursday's show. Rams head coach Sean McVay said he's, quote, optimistic that tight end Terrence Ferguson will play in the divisional round against the Bears. He had a hamstring injury that kept him out of the wild card round. Colby Parkinson, who caught, of course, that critical late touchdown from Matthew Stafford, he ran 24 routes on the day to Tyler Higbee's 20 routes. They didn't use 3 tight ends like they had been. They only used the 2 tight ends because I believe, because Ferguson was out. Both Higbee and Parkinson saw 3 targets. So if you throw Ferguson in there just for DFS purposes, I feel like it's just going to be really hard to know who's going to see the targets. Davante Adams being healthy, and let me know if you disagree, but I believe him being healthy means that nobody can get there for fantasy purposes besides Puka, besides Adams as a pass catcher.
No one will get there volume wise, but one of these guys, like they're making a lot of red zone trips and they do pass in the red zone a lot. Obviously that's partially because it's a lot because of the gravity Davante Adams has in the red zone. But I do think that Terrence Ferguson's return makes it very frustrating, but especially in DFS, getting a 7% rostered Tyler Higbee 40 yards and a touchdown, that's where your bread gets buttered there. So I think it makes it really frustrating and makes it from in a 500 person contest, I can play Higbee to in a 50,000 person contest, I can play Higbee. Right. But I do think it still is a spot where we know the Rams are so good at passing, so good at throwing touchdowns in the red zone, and their tight ends play so much because they love running out multiple tight ends that specifically Parkinson and Higbee will be live as DFS plays. I think Ferguson probably enters, if he's healthy, enters the week as a very distant tight end 3 on this team. Of anyone not getting a lot of snaps, it's probably ultimately going to be him.
I have a stat about, and we'll talk about this on Thursday's preview show, but Rams Bears profiles as a shootout. Obviously, I'm not breaking news there. The Bears in the wild card round against Green Bay had over 500 total team air yards. I don't think I've seen that this year. And the Rams had over 400 against Carolina. So we are talking about 2 teams that just let it rip with their quarterbacks. And I think if things break right, we could see a lot of points in that game. Thank God. Sorry to get religious again. Last item here. Patriots head coach Mike Vrabel said that cornerback Christian Gonzalez, who suffered a concussion in the wild card round, remains in the concussion protocol. He was going to be iffy for the divisional round against the Texans. I guess I'm just saying if he's out, it's it's a good thing. It's a matchup boost for CJ Stroud, for Nico Collins if he plays. Now Nico, like we said, I call him Nico because I know him personally. He also has a hip injury. So I guess what I'm saying in the end is keep it locked to Rotoworld for updates on all of these guys. Kyle, thanks for joining me today. We will be back on Thursday for a divisional round preview show with me, Denny, Pat Daugherty, and Kyle Dvorchak. We'll see you then.